we probably will have about 10, I think 10 presentations of native-led cooperatives that are agricultural and art. So this is like a dream of mine to be able to have this. So we were just really grateful. I'll let you go, Justin, and then.
Okay, thanks, Pamela. So welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all here. My name is Justin Carter. I'm a project associate with a little nonprofit called the Center for Rural Affairs. Familiar with the center? We're located in the town of Lyons, Nebraska. It's in the northeastern part of the state. We do a really broad amount of work around rural communities, small business development, rural policy advocacy, food and farm work. We also have an arm that does inclusion work in rural communities for new immigrant populations. And we do food systems work, and we have staff in the communities of Santee Sioux Nation and Omaha Nation here in Nebraska. So want to welcome everybody to our series of models of Native cooperative ownership. We've been doing this series, Pamela, I guess since late July now. And we've had cooperatives from all over the country join us. Tonight, we want to welcome in Laura and Leah to tell us about their traditional white corn cooperative. Really excited to have them. And also, as always, really excited to have Pamela standing. This is our facilitator. So thank you all so much. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Pamela.
Well, Osio Nigada. Nuote unole ducato ania we digi yui chalgi nidua quado. So we're really happy to have everyone here, and we're really excited to hear from Laura and Leah and to learn about their cooperative and how these things can be, how we can do these in our own communities for, designed by our own culture, by our language, by our cultural lifeways, that we can do these things to help our community grow strong. So with that, I want to welcome Leah and Laura, and they're a mother and daughter team. So this is exciting. We've got the family here with us tonight. So we'll let you get started, and they have a presentation they're going to share.
Hello everyone, my name is Leah Zize. I'm Wolf Clan in Oneida, and I'm from the Green Bay area, the Oneida Reservation, and I'm here with my mom. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mom?
Sure. So, hi, Sagoli, Swagwake, Yoster Yo Walyat, Niyunyaks, Oneate Aga, and Yanko for having us today.
Great. So, we wanted to share a little bit about our co-op and how we got started and how we are working to adapt to climate change with growing our traditional foods in our community. So we'll start with a little bit of acknowledging where we are right now. It sounds like people are all over Turtle Island, and that's really exciting. So I'm going to zoom in on that part right there. I'm calling in from Madison, Wisconsin, which is Ho-Chunk territory, so right here on the bottom of Wisconsin. And Mom, where are you right now?
I'm in Mankato, Minnesota, so I'm just south of Minneapolis.
Okay, so you're like over here somewhere.
Yeah.
So, where we farm though is up here in kind of the little thumb armpit of Wisconsin on the Oneida Reservation. That's still Ho-Chunk territory, Menominee territory, kind of on the border there. Our original treaty was with the Menominee, so we had a treaty with them to move from our original homelands, which are over here, number 20, this purple blotch. So I want to just kind of talk about what we want to go over today. We're going to talk about sort of our original teachings. I'm sorry, there's a plane going overhead. How that got disrupted, and then how we're remembering those teachings through agriculture, and now how we're adapting to new challenges and new disruptions that we're facing today. So we are the people of the Longhouse, the Haudenosaunee. We're 6 nations that came together and formed a treaty to live in peace together And at the sort of the central idea of that piece is our foodways and our villageways. And so this is a beautiful painting by Dawn Darkmountain that shows the three sisters working together, which is one of our stories. And these three plants together are called Junkenkwa, or the life sustainers. So these are the ones that we depend on. These are the foods that feed our spirit and feed our bodies. Mom, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. So I just really want to paint a picture of what our life was like before the great disruption of Europeans coming to our lands. You guys know the history about that, how, you know, the people that lived on the East Coast were like hit first with a bunch of disease that they didn't have an immune system for. And then more and more settlers came, colonizers came, and really disrupted everything about our lives. So before the Great Disruption, you can imagine that an entire village would rely on each other to survive. And everyone had a job, from the littlest person to the oldest person. And everyone had to work cooperatively together in order to survive. So longhouse life was hard. You know, winters were long in New York. Um, People didn't live that long. 45 was considered old. Um, and we had a matrilineal clan system. So you knew who your mother was, and that's all that mattered. So my mother is Wolf Clan, I'm Wolf Clan, and my daughter Leah is Wolf Clan. All the clan lines go through the mother's side. We had the first representative government of democracy, which is studied and verified, that Oneida's Iroquois people helped Benjamin Franklin draft what the Constitution is for the United States to this, you know, today. Benjamin Franklin spent a lot of time with our people. We had an elected chief system. We still do. We have 50 chiefs that represent the 6 nations. The chiefs are nominated by the women, and if the chief does not do what the women say, then they can take his chief title away and they can give it to someone else. So the women really controlled the land. They controlled the food. They controlled when people were going to go to war. They controlled like the education system, the politics. Women had an enormous amount of power. And there was true abundance for healthcare. You know, everyone received free housing, free food, free education. It was a really beautiful life, and we followed our traditional teachings, our original instructions, and we were perfectly happy, healthy people. We had food security. The corn that we're talking about today was actually our money. And we would trade that with all the other tribes on Turtle Island. So our trades went all the way up to Arctic, all the way down to Seminole, and down to Mexico. We would move our villages like every 20 years. So the land would be depleted around us, the game would be depleted, and we would pick up and move further from the, you know, our original village, and we wouldn't come back to that place for about 100 years. And by the time we came back, it was fully restored back to being able to sustain people again. So you can see in this picture, men are building a longhouse in the background. What they're doing is it's called extending the rafters. So they're making that longhouse bigger because another family is moving in. And they use all natural building materials, trees that were in the area. And inside of the house, you would have like bunk beds on the outer walls. And then in the middle would be fire pits. There's a little smokestack door on the top. And there'd be little fires in there for cooking. The women are all working. One woman is pounding corn, the woman that's standing. Another woman is sitting down doing pottery. And the third woman is drying food over a fire. So people did research, like anthropologists did research on our communities, and they realized through all the records that were kept by the non-Indian people that would visit with us, that women would only work 12 hours per week, and the rest of the time they would have for arts and crafts, politics, raising their families, you know, having conversations, visiting with other villages, you know, whatever made them happy. And the men worked about 10 hours a week. So we had an amazing life. And that is something that we are trying to get back to. We feel like in our communities, we have the most sober, educated women that we've ever had in our lifetimes, in my mother's lifetime and her mother's lifetime. And that the thing that's going to really put us over the hump and get us back to the steady state is our food and our food ways. Okay, Leah.
Okay. So one more thing I would just add to this about food security is that it's in our teachings to have 7 years of food stored away. And so we have these really huge underground caches that we would put all of our corn and beans and all our dried foods down there. And that really came in handy when we kind of faced all the disruptions that we faced when our villages were burnt down by the Sullivan campaign after the Revolutionary War. We had foods to sustain our peoples. And so we haven't ever gotten back to that point, though, of having that 7 years of food. So that's something that we use as a goal and kind of a navigation for us as we're making decisions and deciding how much to grow and how much our families need in that. So those disruptions, of course, I'm not going to talk a lot about them because I think we all are hearing a lot about them now in our communities of the disruption of religious institutions, federal policy, land loss, all of that stuff, and the effect that that had on our way of life, our village way of life, our family system, our clan system, our beliefs, and our food ways. But we're at a time now where we really feel like we're seeing new beginnings and a large-scale return to all of that. And so before we go any further, I just want to say that even though we're the ones here talking to you about the work that we're doing, we're kind of picking up the legacy of everybody who has come before us, all the seed savers and all of the people who made sure that we still have those seeds to grow today. This didn't just kind of happen out of nowhere. That was really intentional, especially on the journey from New York to Wisconsin, to save the seeds that first winter instead of eating them so that the people could eat the next year. So I just want to honor that and just say that we're just carrying on our responsibilities. And really what we're sharing is our individual points of view. We're not trying to speak for the nation, and we're not even really trying to speak for the whole co-op. So let's get into kind of the co-op and how we got started. So we got started because my mom got really mad one day that I couldn't find any corn from an indigenous grower on my travels when I was in the Confederacy. And so she said, that's it, we're growing corn. This is ridiculous that we can't find any corn. And so we grew corn that first year. It was a total miserable failure. And we learned a lot of lessons. And one of the biggest lessons that we learned was that we're not meant to grow corn by ourselves. We're meant to grow corn together. And so we got all of our friends and all of the people that were visiting in our community for the Food Sovereignty Summit that year in a room to talk about what everybody's experiences are growing corn in their own backyards. And everybody had the same experience. They have these little backyard plots, and the soil's not good enough, so the corn doesn't reach maturity. If the corn does reach maturity, the raccoons wipe the whole thing out in one night and they don't get any corn. So we decided that we would just try an experimental 1 year pilot of let's just grow together on a couple of acres and just see what happens. So we got a small grant from Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. We got a farmer rancher grant, and we put out a little postcard to all of the Oneida families on the reservation saying, if you want to come learn about soil health and corn, come to this workshop. And like 50 people showed up, which we thought we were really blown away by. And then after that workshop, we said, if anybody wants to try growing corn together, then just stay and we'll have a conversation about that. And 10 families stayed. And that's how we got started, was those 10 families. And then Mom, do you want to talk about how we got the land and the first equipment pieces that we got?
Sure. So in Oneida, the land that's owned by the tribe is managed by the tribe's land commission. And so they decide when the tribe repurchases land within the reservation from a non-Indian farmer or landowner, what to do with that land. And we have a huge farm that has a calf cow operation, so for raised they do beef grazing. We also have a bison farm. We also have a Junhenqua organic agriculture farm, and then we have a few native farmers that lease land from the tribe, and they grow cash crops. And so when I talked to the Land Commission, I told them what we were doing, and they thought it was such a novel idea that they decided to suspend the fees for the land to get access to the land. And that was the first time that that ever happened. And we have a really great relationship with the Land Commission, and we get little parcels of land that are tucked away that are perfect for us because we don't want any cross contamination from any other corn. So it's not desirable. It's not huge pieces of property. It's like 25 acres, 18 acres, 13 acres, you know, smaller plots of land that the other farms don't want to deal with because they're too far away. Their equipment is too big for that space. The land isn't that great. They don't want to deal with rebuilding the land again. So my husband and I bought some equipment at the Future Farmer auction that was happening in Seymour, Wisconsin. We bought a big 1957 case tractor. We bought a disc. We bought a trailer. We bought a big 500-gallon sprayer. And then we realized that we needed to find a cultivating tractor to get the weeds out between the rows. And we accidentally found one up in Door County when we went to visit a farmer who was selling a piece of equipment. We thought it was a cultivator, and he said, "No, you need this." And he flipped off this old tarp, and underneath it was a 1945 Alice Chalmers cultivating tractor that had the cultivators still on it, and I fell in love. It was so small and not threatening that I thought for sure that the ladies in our group would love this little tractor. So we went up with our trailer and we brought it home, and that little tractor has saved our butts so many times because it goes in between the rows of corn when the corn is young, and it rips out the weeds that are in the area between the two corn rows. And we hand weed our fields, so that takes up and it just makes our lives so much easier. So that little $1,000 was like the best buy we ever made of all of the pieces of equipment that we have. So we have equipment. We have a place to store equipment. The 4-H organization Oneida lets us use their barn, and we store all the equipment inside. And we have a really great relationship with our community, and it works for everyone involved.
Oh, I just wanted to say something about this. I guess I can talk about it on this one too. So we're talking about the white corn that we're growing here. You can see this picture. This is a nice, really fully formed cob. And our white corn is like really long ears of corn. It's 8 rows. It's a flint corn. And so when we pick it in 2 stages. We pick it in the green corn stage when it's kind of like sweet corn, and then we also pick it in the fully mature stage. And it's a lot of work. We pick everything by hand. We do everything by hand, and we're all volunteers. So nobody is paid by our co-op. It's all by volunteer time. And we track all of our time in a private Facebook group. We have a chat that's just for logging our hours, so that at the end of the season, we can divide up the harvest by the number of hours that were invested into the co-op. Because as you can imagine, people have shifting priorities throughout the year. So you have some people who are putting in hundreds of hours, and then you have some people who are really squeaking by our minimum threshold of 50 hours a year. So we just try to keep it fair that way and keep it equitable. And then we also set aside a share for the community, so that if anybody has a death in their family, that they don't have to go looking around for corn, that they have processed corn ready there for them to make their traditional meals. So we're learning a lot about our soils. We're learning a lot about the damage that's been done to our soils with traditional or with conventional agriculture. Can you mute yourself? Was that your sirens?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. And so we're remembering our different traditional approaches to rebuilding the soil. And one of those approaches is actually rotating our fields. And so I'll get into kind of more of what that looks like in a couple of slides. We're also remembering our plant relatives beyond the field, so our medicines that we gather to soak the corn seeds in so that they sprout early and that they actually kind of repel different birds and rodents and things that would want to come and eat our seeds. And then we're also learning about basket making and pottery to harvest our corn, wash our corn, and cook our corn in. So that's been really exciting for us to kind of extend our relationship beyond just the corn to the other relatives that are related to that food system. And like I said, we do all of this working together, and we're always inviting elders and youth to come and work with us and making sure that there's tasks for everybody to do, even the smallest task of braiding the corn or making corn husk dolls or whatever people can do while they're there, just telling stories and spending time together. We encourage everybody to come out and do that, which has gotten a little bit harder with the pandemic, but we're finding workarounds and kind of spacing each other out and dropping off corn at people's houses so they can do it with just their families and stuff like that. And then every year we grow a little bit bigger with something we call Under the Wing, where we can nominate somebody new from the community to join the co-op as an under the winger, so that person would join kind of under you, and you would train them throughout that year, all the different steps that we go through with the corn. And they would try to spend as much time as they could, and then at the end of the year we have a conversation about whether or not that person maintains the harmony within the group, and if we want to invite them to become a full member. Because we know nothing that we do is really possible without everybody working together, and if there's tension or if something just isn't quite working right, then everything falls apart. So we really try to keep a good mind when we're out there. We have a lot of like things you can't do around the corn. You can't swear, you can't drink, no drugs, no politics, no bad words. You have to really keep a good mind when you're around our foods. So we just try to make sure we have that harmony and follow those teachings whenever we can too. So this part, I know we're running a little bit long, but I wanted to talk about what we're doing with climate adaptation. So the NOAA released the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association released a report in 2012 that said that anybody born after April of 1985 has never experienced a cooler than average year. So everybody in sort of my age range and younger, we've all experienced hotter than average years, and it's just getting warmer and warmer. And so we've seen floods, we've seen all kinds of things in just the 6 years that we've been growing. And it's been really hard for us to try to figure out how to navigate through that. So this is one of our fields that got those huge spring rains that kind of flooded out the whole Midwest. And we lost about 90% of our crop to those rains, which is really significant if you think about our harvest the year before was 10,000 pounds. And we went down to just harvesting 1,000 pounds of corn. So that was a huge swing and something that kind of reminded us and called back to making sure that you have food stored away in case of those catastrophes. So we're trying to be really forward thinking with how we're approaching this, but also kind of following our teachings. So one of the things that we did was we bought a hiller, and this creates these long hills, which is kind of like the mound system of growing the corn, beans, and squash together. And you can see how the water is pooling up on either side of the mounds, which is exactly what we wanted. And this actually has been done in this area for a really long time. So on the left, you can see pictures of the mounds that have been here for thousands of years in what is now Wisconsin. So this is an agricultural method that has been used in this land for a really long time, and we're using it again now. For what we're seeing. So that's really interesting for us to think about. And then the other thing that we're doing is we manage about 30 acres of land altogether, but we only grow corn on about 4 or 5 of those every year. So all of the other acres we try to plant cover crops. And we're trying to rebuild our soil, increase the organic matter in our soil, improve infiltration rates, reduce erosion, and build up our soil microbiome. And I like to think that this calls back to our village rotation that we had, that my mom was talking about at the beginning, because we can't pick up our whole reservation and move that around anymore. But out in our cornfields, at least, we can rotate where we're growing corn and where we're rebuilding the soil. So we're working on how to do intercropping, which is planting in between the rows, and then full no-till, which is planting. This fall we're going to put in a rustic rye, and then this spring We're going to roll that down and plant right into that without tilling up the soil at all to grow our corn. And that mat will keep the weeds down and add green nitrogen into the soil. So those are some things that we're experimenting with. We're trying to look at how much carbon we can actually sequester into the soil with these practices. Because if you don't till up the soil, you're not releasing the carbon that's trapped in the soil back into the atmosphere. And you can actually start using your farm field as a carbon sink. You want to take this one, Mom?
Sure. So we have many, many, many relationships with many different organizations. Leah mentioned the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. That was our first grant. We partnered with the Intertribal Agriculture Council. We are a 501c5, which is an agricultural nonprofit, but not a 501c3. And so we needed a umbrella fiscal sponsor for our grants. And Intertribal Agriculture Council was right there with us the whole way, helping us with maintaining our grants and working with funders. We got a grant from the Great Lakes Commission, and that was to like keep the phosphorus out of the Great Lakes. And we did a really good job with that grant. Leah is one of the board members for an organization called Braiding the Sacred. That's a international movement of native corn growers, and that's in Canada, the United States, and in Mexico. And then Oneida Nation of Wisconsin has been a huge supporter of our group. They're very proud of us. Our elected officials get to brag about our group when they travel. We're getting pretty well known across Indian country. And we're very removed from the rest of our relatives that Leah pointed out on that map earlier, where most of our Iroquois or Haudenosaunee relatives are in New York and in Canada. We are way, way over in Wisconsin. And so that has caused us to really lose the family connection, the political connection, and the spiritual connection with the rest of our families that we're related to in those areas in New York and Canada. And so by growing corn together and meeting with at the Braiding the Sacreds, it has really rekindled the relationships between Oneida and the tribes that are in New York and in Canada. So when we are working with our corn, I try to explain to people that the corn that we grow has nothing to do with the corn. It has everything to do with the spiritual connection to the food and rebuilding our community in Oneida. So the people that are in our group, we've known them for years. You know, we've seen them at events, we hung out at their houses, we've had dinners with them. But when we spend that many hours together in the barn, we really, really know each other. And we've developed this relationship where we can call on one another and trust that the people are going to come and help. So we are also been approached by the Potawatomi Nation in Carter, Wisconsin, to help mentor them to grow corn. They don't have a lot of Potawatomi corn seed at this time, so they are going to use our corn seed to learn how to grow the corn. And then as they become proficient, they will switch over and grow out the few corn seeds that they have of the Potawatomi corn variety. So that's a really great opportunity for us to become mentors to another tribe.
Yeah, and all those relationships, we call on them a lot during harvest time. So we pick all our corn by hand and then we husk it and then we braid it up and hang it. As you can see these pictures of the corn braids hanging. And that takes a lot of time. It takes about 1 or 2 hours to produce 1 pound of corn. And that our bumper year, we had 10,000 pounds of corn. So we had school groups coming through. We had Braiding the Sacred gatherings, bringing 50, 100 people onto the reservation to help us pick corn. It was crazy. And so none of this would really be possible without all the relationships and friendships that we've made along the way. And sort of just the dedication of everybody in our co-op to get out there and help with harvest time, because that's really when, and it's just around the corner for us now, that's when things are really going to pick up and get crazy. So working together really closely, obviously there's going to be issues that arise, and so we're trying to also integrate our teachings into how we handle consensus and mediation in our cooperative. And so trying to remember that we have not just treaties between nations, but also between people and our plant relatives and our animal relatives, and trying to maintain a sense of harmony and balance between all of those in everything that we do. And then also remembering that our clans have specific responsibilities to carry out. And so trying to make sure that the way that our co-op operates reflects that clan responsibility that we all have as well. Do you want to take it from here, Mom?
Sure. So one of the important lessons about taking care of our corn is to store it properly. So this is a picture of my cousin Becky's food storage area in her kitchen. She has jars of corn that is raw, jars of corn that is dehydrated. She has pickles, jams, jellies, maple syrup. She has corn flour up there. She has all different kinds of beans. She has dried squash. She has tobacco. And what she's really focusing on is bartering her white corn for other foods that other people grow. And so that's one of the really great things about our group too, is that we have enough corn now where we can trade with other people, and we can rekindle the trade routes that we have with other tribes in the Great Lakes area. And that's been very, very successful for us to reconnect with other tribes that way too. Other people are talking about building root cellars. And so the importance of putting your food in jars, like with a 2-piece lid, like a canning jar, is that it keeps all the critters out and it keeps the air out of your food. So your food can be preserved for indefinite amount of time that way. So they haven't had the water bath like you're making jam and you have to put your jars in a hot water bath and then it seals the lid. It's just in the jar and the lid is turned tight. So it's just a storage method that we feel is the easiest way for us to store our food. So I just told you a little bit about sharing our seeds with the Potawatomi people. Every year when we start to harvest, so we're going to start harvesting on September 30th. We're going to go out to the field at 9 o'clock in the morning as a group. We're going to bring out a truck and a trailer. And inside that trailer, there's going to be a tarp. And we're going to go through the fields and we're going to pick the corn. And after the corn is picked off the stalk, we'll break the stalk halfway down so that people know that that row is done. And then we'll put that corn in the trailer and we'll bring that to the barn. And then we'll pull the tarp out of the trailer onto the ground and we'll sit around in a circle and we'll start pulling the husks back on the corn. And once in a while, you'll find the most perfect corn you've ever seen in your life. And that corn goes into a separate bin to be nominated to be a seed saved corn. The other corn that's not quite as pretty gets braided with all the rest of the corn, gets hung up in the barn, and that corn is the corn that we divide up at the end of the drying period, which usually we hang it up in October, and we usually it takes a while for it to dry down from 50% moisture down to like 13% moisture. So we're talking about maybe the end of February, early March. The corn is dry enough to hand out. So when my cousin Becky comes in to the barn, she'll look over all the nominations and she'll make the final decision about what corn is seed worthy and what corn gets kicked out of her seed pile. And then she'll make a braid with the beautiful long cobs, and then she'll put a flower on the top of the braid to signify that that is a seed braid, not an eating braid. And then she'll take those home to her house and she'll hang them up in her basement area. She has a finished basement. And they'll dry there during the winter so we don't have to worry about mice getting on them or moths or anything like that. So that seed corn then in the springtime is shelled and it's jarred and it's dated. And it will be put into the rotation of the corn that gets grown the following years.
And then we'd spread that out too. We'd disperse that across the membership so that all of our seeds aren't kept in one place.
Yes.
Just in case there is a catastrophe, that we don't lose all of our seeds. And
then,
we have. Yep.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just wanted to mention that we do like to add corn to our corn seed from other nations to diversify our strains so that we're not growing the same seeds over and over again. We need diversification.
Yep. I was just gonna say, we probably have about 7 years of seed saved at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we don't have 7 years of food put away yet, we have at least 7 years of seed. So this is a slide on bartering. Before we go any further, I think one thing I did want to mention was the way all of this works is that we have monthly meetings for all the co-op members, which we used to do in person, but now we do them virtually. And so we'll get together, we'll put an agenda together, we'll discuss everything that needs to be discussed, try to reach a consensus on everything, and then move forward from there. And it's usually my mom and I who are coordinating those meetings and kind of keeping everything moving along. But everybody's input is really important to that because everybody has a different gift or the way that they see something. So we really try to make sure that everybody's input is a part of every big decision that we make as a co-op. And then we also have little committees that form off. So there's the back acres that are the grumpy old men that take care of all the equipment and do all the field prep. There's the culture keepers that make sure we're practicing our language and integrating our culture and traditions. And then my mom and I and a couple other members are on the taking care of business committee. So we do all the grant writing, all the grant reporting, presentations and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we spread the work up, and it's all just volunteer kind of people taking on responsibilities as they can. And then we track our hours and try to hold ourselves accountable to all of that. And we've started doing these little socially distanced barter events too, where we get together and share all of the things that we've grown, because a few of us have gone beyond just what we grow in the co-op, and they actually have homestead farms now in our group. So people are growing pigs and chickens and goats and all kinds of vegetables and stuff, and maple syrup and wild rice and all this. So we get together and get to share all of our foods and crafts with each other. We do it in our friend's high tunnel during the winter months, and it's really beautiful out there to do that. And then, rekindling those relationships. So we've probably traded, I know I personally have traded as far east as Maine and as far south as Louisiana. How far have you traded, Mom? Probably a lot farther than me.
Well, I give a lot of my corn away too. So my husband and we're gypsies. We travel around from powwow to powwow, and when we go down to Florida, we bring our corn with us to share with the other dancers and vendors. So I would say the furthest south will be Oaxaca, Mexico. We take corn down there every time we go down there. And then maybe the furthest north would have to be like Six Nations in Ontario. Westward, I would have to say maybe Rowan White has some of our seeds in Oregon. And then east would probably be the Mohawk Nations that are along the east coast. So we do try to get it spread out quite a bit. It's a great way to build friendship and community around food, and to teach people about our culture and our language with our foods, and that's really been super helpful. I just want to say that when Leah and I started this co-op, we did all of the jobs that needed to be done. And then as the years rolled by, I was able to convince some of the members to take on little little jobs. So like Becky is now the seed person. We used to call it the seed keeper, but we didn't like that name and we changed it to something else. So she's in charge of the seeds, and then Tony Kuchma is in charge of picking up ashes. We cook our corn with hardwood ashes. The ashes come from the Menominee Nation. The Menominee Nation has such a huge forest. They have outdoor wood burning stoves to heat their homes. They have huge amounts of ash that they don't need. So we trade them for one small galvanized garbage can. We give them one bag of dehydrated corn. And it's a great symbiotic relationship that we have with Menominee Nation. So Tony now is going to drive up there to get the um, ashes, and that used to be one of my jobs that I did. And so I'm slowly convincing the members that they can do a little bit more and to take some of the burden off of us, so that the work is a little bit more equally shared. But the first year, I would say, okay, who wants to go get ashes? Like, no, no, you go get ashes. We're afraid, So we had to build up their confidence. And another thing that we had to do was to build up our competency and our experiences. So the people that were the 10 families that came together that grew corn, most of them had no idea what we were doing. I mean, they were really fresh. They didn't come with any kind of preconceived notions or this is how we did it in my family. You know, we didn't have any of that to deal with. It was just like, oh, this is how we do it. Great, let's do it this way. And then as under the wingers come in and they're learning from us, we encourage them to, because they have fresh eyes, to point out things that make more sense. So, for instance, we were all taught by the Junhequa farm to start in one corner of the field and pick the rows and then go towards the other end of the field in a organized fashion. And one of our new wingers said, you know, the raccoons know where the best corn is in the field. We should go to where the raccoons are first and pick out from there. So it's just that little bit of insight that people bring, the fresh eyes, the new ideas that really make us a stronger group.
Absolutely. And there's people now getting involved that have more of the teachings and the tool making side of things that we don't necessarily have because we've been so focused on growing corn and growing farmers and teaching everybody about soil health and all that stuff that now that we have people coming in the group that have a lot of language knowledge, they have a lot of harvesting medicines for the corn knowledge, how to make baskets, how to do pottery, all that stuff that we're learning and then connecting down into our teachings. So we're really starting to think beyond the cornfield and think beyond just cooking and eating our traditional foods to all of our different relatives and teachings that we have in our lifeways. And so that's kind of what we think is making us more resilient as a group, is that there's always something new to learn. There's always some next thing that we can be integrating into our co-op so it doesn't feel stale. And I'm sorry, I have a cold that's trying to talk. Kind of thinking about the future and what's coming down the pike, we know there's going to be more climate chaos that we're going to be experiencing. So we're trying to grow our co-op to be 50 families, and then supporting other co-ops and other farms on other nations as they develop. So there's a hemp co-op that's gotten started, there's a wild rice co-op getting started, and we're trying to help them as much as we can because, you know, even though we're not a formally incorporated cooperative, we function as a cooperative. We work together to make sure that we're all have aligned goals, and then we share in what we produce. We share in not just the corn, but in the teachings and in our time together and making our community more resilient. So I think that's all I wanted to say on that. Mom, do you have anything else to add?
No. I'm good.
All right, y'all go.
Yahweh.
Does anyone have any questions? You can go ahead and unmute.
I can go ahead and get us kicked off with a little question, Pamela. It's pretty simple, but it was so exciting and really fascinating to hear about the bartering system that you all have with other nations all over North America. And I was just wondering, when you all got started with that, was it difficult to establish those relationships, or how did that work?
No, I think it was really easy because the other nations have been ricing forever and they have been collecting the maple syrup. And that's a really rare commodity in our community. We do have a few maple syrup camps that have been going for a while, but they're just for the people that are in the camps. And so to reach out to other nations that are doing maple syrup and trading them for our white corn was a really natural next step. Because our shares of corn are so huge that there's no way that one family could eat them all. And so it could, again, it becomes our money, and we're able to use it to get the things that we want and need. So my cousin Becky has been trading her white corn for people building her house, haircuts, maple syrup, jams, singing lessons, basketry, you know, anything you can think of. It doesn't have to be something that that is that you don't, you know, she doesn't want you to go to the store and buy wild rice. She wants it to be wild rice that's harvested by native people. And so there are some, you know, like restrictions for that. But I think what she's trying to do is teach people that they have value beyond the dollars that they make at work when they go to their employment, that they have other gifts to share with the community.
Thank you. Yeah, that's such a powerful philosophy.
Yeah.
Someone asked about she has I'm not quite sure. She wanted to know if there was any resources of your co-op available online. That's the first question.
Yeah, I was actually just going to post the Unguaqua YouTube channel. That's Becky's Homestead Farm YouTube channel. They have a lot of um, videos on there about collecting the medicines, cooking the corn, braiding it, all of that stuff on there. So I'll put that link in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and also the way that we got started was with barter. So we didn't have enough seeds to plant all of our acres that we had, just within our little group. And so we got some wild rice and went out east to a food summit in Michigan, and we traded with Onondaga Farm wild rice for corn seed. And that was a really powerful time, because we later on were at this moon ceremony, and this woman was talking about a time when the corn and the wild rice would get traded again from the east to the west, and we were like, we just did that. So that was really beautiful to be part of that and feel like we were kind of answering the call. And so we we get little signs like that along the way that tell us that we're doing good, we're going the right direction. All the time, like the white corn plants that show up in our field to tell us that the corn spirit is coming to visit us. That kind of stuff is really powerful for us to kind of encourage us to keep going, because it's a lot of work. And there's some times when you're like, oh, I don't want to go harvest corn for another 12 hours today. But, you got to get out there and do it. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps us going.
I really, one of the things that we've been working on is helping people to remember that what we carry in our DNA about trade and exchange, and to really get people to be proud of that again, that, when you look at those intricate trade routes and those huge trade centers, but also that our tribes had confederacies, we had trade confederacies. And, we went, I know about the stories that I was told from my elders about, how because it was the women that picked the person that was kind of our marketing rep that did the trade, because along the Southeast, they had a trade dialect. So it had to be a person that knew how to speak that trade dialect. And when we did that, we set a value on everything that we traded. And we had ginseng, so we expected copper, we expected kettles, we expected, these are the things that we knew that our products were, what are the value and the worth of our products. So, and our survival in the winter depended on how well how well that marketing rep, so to speak, traded on our behalf. And I was just talking with Dr. Charlie Gord at home, and he's done some writing, and I said, we need to start bringing this back and really elevate it again, because that's what made us strong. And and we could feed ourselves. We had all these things before, like you said, before the disruption. But I have a question, because we had started a co-op at Cherokee Nation with the women. We never incorporated. It thrived for about 10 years, but we didn't have some of the same direction that you guys have applied to yours. And I'm wondering what was your choice not to incorporate as a cooperative? I'm just curious because I get asked this a lot by people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the trust that we have in our group being amongst people who really know each other, and not feeling the need to formalize that agreement with bylaws and rules of order and all that kind of stuff. It might become necessary at some point when we reach a certain size just to maintain the organization and maintain clarity of why we're there and what we're doing and how our processes work. But we really try to be more flexible, and we try to just deal with issues as they arise the best way that we can. And so, that means from year to year, things do change for us. We realize that, oh, we didn't predict this thing was going to happen. Now we have to kind of change our protocol to adapt to this new scenario. If we had incorporated right away and we had written those bylaws, we'd have to go through a whole process of changing those bylaws to address these new issues that are coming up. So I think if we reach a point where we're so big that the communication between all of our members requires that kind of formality, we might go that route. But right now we're like 15 families, and we don't have any issues that can't be resolved over just a Zoom call.
And the opportunities that arise are so fast. We have to be nimble enough where we can react to a grant that needs to be written in the next 5 days for a project that we've been dreaming about for the last 6 years. And now we can finally go for it. And if we were so structured and so organized, there wouldn't be enough time for the community to get together to approve even writing the grant. So, and another thing is we don't want the government involved in our work. This is food that we're growing for ourselves and for our community. It's not a profit organization. And so we really feel like less intrusion and less formality is better for us.
Yeah, and our nation doesn't have the cooperative chapter yet for us to incorporate under Oneida. We'd have to incorporate with the state, and we don't want to do that.
No.
Yeah, that's something, somebody asked me that today, and I said, how I feel about it is we meet our communities where they're at, and if they choose to go that route, we'll help them in that route. If they choose not to incorporate, we will help them to the best of our ability to function as a collective and, to be able to work that way. I think sometimes that one of the things is that there's so much about the cooperative model that aligns with our culture, but there's a part of that cooperative model that is so Eurocentric in its roots that it, like even the word patronage, it's kind of like, and I come from a matrilineal, it's, we run the show, we have a lot of strength as women and we're kind of bossy, but that's okay because that's our role, to be like that. But it just, I think about, I'd love to talk with you guys more so that I'm really providing good advice with communities that I'm working with to help them really navigate. Because I think there's a rush to go into that Eurocentric protocol. And I just, I really do believe that this is how we worked together before everything happened. Because our survival really depends on how well we cooperate. And I don't think how I feel is this last year and a half has really shown us that we need to start practicing that interdependence with one another again. And we need to go, we can't operate as separate. We have to work collectively and cooperatively with one another to make it work. So you guys, I really learned a lot from you tonight, and I just appreciate, for me, the teachings. And I heard other things from people, just really saying thank you for this presentation tonight. And I'm really inspired by what you guys are doing. Well,
you're welcome to come to Oneida anytime in October to learn, because doing and talking are two different things.
Exactly.
And when the Potawatomis come to visit with us, that's when I hope that they can learn that what we're talking about has nothing to do with corn.
No, that's really beautiful. Now, is anybody else, did you guys get your questions answered? And if you have questions, you can send them to us and we can forward them on.
Yeah, I put our Facebook page on there. If you want to follow us, you can send us a message directly through there. We don't have like a website or anything like that. We're super lean. And we're still depending on fiscal sponsors to get grants and stuff like that. I think we're just starting to get to the point now where we're thinking about incorporating it as a 501c3, just so that we can do our own grants through our organization. We don't have to beg around for a fiscal sponsor every time. Because we did just have a grant opportunity come up and we actually had 5 days to turn around and get that in. And so trying to find a fiscal sponsor in 5 days is not super easy, but luckily we have 2 different members of our co-op now who have their own 501c3s, so we were able to use theirs. So I think that as long as we can stay informal, we'll do that because it's so much simpler. It's so much simpler. We don't have to worry about, the financial reporting and all that kind of stuff. Which can really bog an organization down if you don't have somebody who really, really loves spreadsheets.
But now, are you able to do, outside of grants, is there other ways that you guys are bringing funding into the organization? Is that through your bartering and your trade and exchange?
Yeah, we do fundraising meals that we cook for the community. There's like different groups that come through Oneida to do like traditional cultural events, and so we'll cook meals for them. And then we'll do like meals at the farmers market at the Burger Barn. We'll do fundraisers there. Sometimes we'll do like events like this. All the honoraria goes directly to the co-op, so we don't take any of that personally. That's all just for the group. So that's kind of how we raise money on an individual kind of little bit by little bit level. We might get to a point one day where we're growing so much corn and we have our own processing facility and we're making tons and tons of dehydrated corn, then maybe we want to put into a little shop or something like that. And then we might need to incorporate as a cooperative because we're going to have revenues that won't work with a nonprofit model.
Yeah. And we do soup sales in our community too. So we'll get 1 quart deli containers, and we'll make soup and we'll fill them up, and when the soup's cooled down, and we'll put them in big coolers and we'll take them to a really great spot, and we sell out $10 a quart because our community loves our soup. So and they love supporting us. They love the mission that we have. They love the community that we built. The way that we share our corn with them in their families in their time of need without ever expecting anything back. It's a true gift to be able to give food to your community.
Well, we sure appreciate you being here tonight. We're just so happy I'm just so happy to have met Leah and now to meet you, Laura. So when in October are you having your doings?
It's every day.
Oh, every day.
Okay. Every day in October until the corn is done.
Okay.
So we'll start on September 30th at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we will go. Sometimes they go into November, and it's every day. So.
Well, I'll have to email you because I'm kind of I can get around much more easy than I have been able to. And so I may take a road trip.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone that's listening is welcome to come to Oneida. The barn is located at the corner of Double E and GE in De Pere. The address is 1600 South Pine Tree Road. And if there's cars parked by the barn, that means we're there. We might have the doors closed because the heat's on. We have little propane heaters, but you're welcome to come. Just knock on the door. We'll let you in.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for those that attended tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks everyone. If you ever want to give me a call, there's my cell phone number. I actually work with United South and Eastern Tribes as their ag programming manager. So I work in agriculture technical assistance for tribes in the East as my day job. So feel free to reach out to me if you need any resources or anything along those lines. Happy to help there too.
Have a beautiful evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Everyone take care. Really glad we could make these connections tonight.
Thank you for having us. Yanko.
Yanko.
Bando.
Thank you, Pamela.
I just feel like we are so blessed to learn from all these different communities. I just feel like my life is richer for it. So I always leave with the teaching. So I'm really grateful for that. So nice to meet you, Laura.
Yes, very nice to meet you. And
Michelle, thank you for joining us all the way from Oregon. My gosh. Well, you have a good evening. That was beautiful, wasn't it?
it really was. We've been getting so lucky. Yeah, like you said, we're just blessed to talk to these different cooperatives. And
just looking at different ways that we can help guide someone if they're stuck in a certain area, and you know, how we can work through that. So that's really really good. I'm excited. So thank you so much, Justin, for allowing me to